To follow along this course, you will have to have two things: a terminal or a command line interface and a text editor. In this video we're going to cover how do you install and make use of them in various operating systems. This video is going to be split up in three parts: the Linux part, the macOS part, and the Windows part. So feel free to just jump to the chapter that corresponds to your particular system setup. Or if you're interested, you can also watch the others. So we'll start with Linux. And when I say Linux, in this particular tutorial, I will be using Ubuntu. And I suggest you do the same. It's easy to download, it's relatively easy to install, and it's kind of beginner friendly. So if you are a novice in Linux world, then I would suggest to start with Ubuntu. If you know your way around Linux, then you don't have to listen to me and use whatever distribution that you're comfortable with. Right, so if you're running Linux, you don't have to install terminal. It's already pre-installed on your system, so you can use it straight away. In order to open the terminal, just press Ctrl-Alt-T and it should magically open. The way Linux distributes software is there are software channels that are already built into the system, and you can add other channels at some point if you want to. But in order to start using those channels, you have to update the information that is available in those channels, and that is done by sudo apt update. We will be talking about all the details of how to use shell and the terminal in the next video, so here the details are not that important. Basically what you are doing is you're using a super user sudo and you're updating the information in these packages. So now let's go ahead and install some packages. In this course we're going to be using a bunch, and let's install them all now. So what we need for now is we need the git package, we need build essential, we need ZSH, and we will also install some Clang related packages. Again, I don't want to go into details right now. This video is just about the setup that you can follow along, but we will talk about what those packages do in detail in the later videos. Okay, let's click install and wait till they're installed. Now that these packages are installed, you can quickly check that everything is installed by just checking one of them. For example, the C++ compiler or the ZSH binary. And you can check that by just typing the C++ --version or ZSH --version. And as you can see, both are installed on the system now, so we can go on and continue our setup process. If you know your way around the system, you can stop here. What we will do next is we will also download the text editor, and we will set up the terminal prompt so that it looks a little bit nicer than it does right now. I personally use ZSH, which just makes your terminal basically look a little bit better and do a little bit more things. So let's try that. We have already installed ZSH, but by default the terminal in Linux will use bash as the shell, and we will learn what is shell in the next video. But to switch the shell, the default shell prompt, we have to type this into the terminal and then reboot the computer, or at least log out and log in. Now, once we have rebooted the system and we logged back in, you can see this prompt in your terminal, which basically asks you if you want to configure it in any specific way. At this point, we don't want that, so we'll just type 0 and continue. We will set a nice configuration to this in a second. You can see that for now, because we set no configuration to it, the terminal looks pretty bare and actually even less colorful than it was before. We will fix it right now. The first thing that we want to do is we want to install the FZF, which is a very handy tool that just makes the history of your commands so much easier to access. I have it on all of my systems, be it work or home desktop, and I think once you try it, you will love it too. So in order to download it, you just have to paste the link in the description below under the FZF, or just copy these things that I'm typing on the screen right now and just press enter so that it gets downloaded. And now we have to just call the installation script by calling the FZF install. Oh yeah, right, and to paste something into the terminal, you have to use Ctrl-Shift-V. The next step is to actually make our terminal look nice. So the way I do it is I just install a tool that does all the handling of all the niceness for me, and this tool is Antigen. To install it, you again download it from its repository somewhere on the internet and put it in your home folder on your system. So just copy the command that I have below and put it into the terminal, and it should work well enough for you. Once this is downloaded, we need to do the last thing in order to make our terminal look nice. We have to copy the contents of the file again that I will link in the description below, which basically is just a template configuration that I use for me, and you can tweak it at some point if you like so later. So just copy that file and let's put it into the .zshrc file, which is our configuration file for our ZSH. And once we're done, we have to source the script or just open a new terminal, and it should magically look so much nicer than it looked before. Last but not least, in order to write code, you will need a text editor, and I believe that the easiest way is to just install Visual Studio Code, which is a very nice editor and an extremely popular one. It's probably now the most popular text editor out there. You can use a different editor if you want to. There is no limitation here, but I do urge you to use a text editor and not an IDE. Okay, so let's download the Visual Studio Code, and for that we just can use the Snap package manager, which is another package manager for Ubuntu, and we just have to basically type snap install, have to provide that it's a classic package, and the package name is code. So now we wait till it finishes, and once it's done we have code installed. Let's open it and open some file in it and just type something and save it, and now this file should be stored on the system. You can always open an internal terminal which is built into the VSCode by just pressing Ctrl tilde, and once you've done that you can see that the file is there, and the command cat actually can show us that the content of the file is exactly what we just saved from our text editor. And just to be sure, you can of course go back to the actual terminal and try the same thing again, and you can see that the file is actually present on the system. Don't worry if something doesn't make sense for now. We will go through a lot of these things in the next videos with a lot more detail. So with this, we are done with the setup, and you are ready to proceed to the next video, whenever that one is available. Okay, so in this part, we are going to be talking about how to set up your environment on Windows. And on Windows, the situation is a little bit more complicated than on Linux. I'm not a Windows expert, and that's why this course is built around Unix-like systems like Linux or macOS. So we will have to make Windows behave well enough for me to understand how it works. And that means that we basically have to make Windows behave like Linux. Thankfully, Windows has developed the WSL, which stands for Windows Subsystem for Linux, and we can easily install that on our system. But before we go there, let's first download and install an amazing application from the Microsoft Store, and it's called the Microsoft Terminal Preview. Let's install that, and once it's installed, let's open it. By default, it will open a PowerShell prompt, which we only will use to install the WSL. So just type the command WSL install. If you pass the -D in Ubuntu, it will straight away download the Ubuntu distribution, so you will be able to use that one. It will take some time, and it will prompt you for your input, to input a username and the password. So just provide any username and any password that you like, and you're all set with your Ubuntu system. Now what you can do is you can close the pop-up window and open another tab in your Windows terminal, but just click on the drop-down menu there and pick that you want a Linux tab. This way you log in directly into your WSL system, and you can actually, you basically work from there as if you work from Linux. From this point on, we can repeat the same procedure as we did back in the Ubuntu part. We have to update our system. We update it by using the command apt. So we type sudo apt update. That will update the distribution of everything that we have in the software package channels. And then we have to download a bunch of software that we will be using in this course, such as Git, Build Essentials, CMake, ZSH, and some Clang utilities. We'll wait till they finish, and once they're done, we can move on forward to set up our system. You could stop here if you want to, but if you would like your terminal to look a bit nicer than it looks now, then go on listening. We will be using ZSH by default. The prompt uses bash, and if it doesn't make any sense to you what is ZSH, what is bash, we will talk a bit about it in the next video, so don't worry. But basically we would like our terminal to use ZSH as the prompt, and for that we have to tell the terminal to do it. We do that by providing the command change sh, and we specify that we want ZSH there. Once that is done, we basically can open a new tab, and this new tab will use ZSH. It will prompt us if we want to use the configuration or not, and initially we don't want to specify any configuration because we will set it in the next moment. And because we didn't set this configuration, the prompt is going to be looking very bare and not really interesting or good looking in any way. We will fix it right now. The first step that we have to do is we have to install the app that I really like. It's called FZF, and it makes your history look amazing, the history of commands. Again, if the history of commands doesn't ring a bell or it doesn't tell you anything, please don't worry about this. In the next video is going to be covered. This is more about the setup that you have to have or can have in order to follow the next video much easier. Right, so we download the FZF and we call the FZF install, and by that time FZF is actually installed on our system. The next step is to download it's a plugin manager for ZSH. It's called Antigen, and basically it's a nice tool to simplify the setup of all the nicenesses that you can have in your command line prompt. So let's do that. Let's download the Antigen, and once we've downloaded it, we will also have to copy a configuration that uses it. And this configuration is available on my GitHub gist. The link will be in the description below. So we copy it there, and we can either source the .zshrc file, or we just open a new terminal tab, and by that time it should run well. Last but not least, if you want to develop code on your system, you need some form of a text editor. Generally speaking, you can use any text editor that you like. If you already have a preference, just use that. But I urge you to use a text editor and not a full-blown IDE. I think the best choice for now for beginners, and it's a very popular editor out there, is the Visual Studio Code, which we can download from the Microsoft Store. So let's do that again. And once it's downloaded, we can of course open it. And the only trick here is because the Visual Studio Code is now installed on the Windows system, but we will be working in the Windows subsystem for Linux in the WSL layer. We need to tell Visual Studio Code how to work in this WSL manner. And for that, there is already an extension in the VSCode store, and we can easily install that one. So for that, just click on the left on the extensions pane and just type WSL, install. And once that is installed, open the command pane with Ctrl-Shift-P and just type WSL, and probably the first choice is going to be the one that you want. We basically want to start a new session in the new window in WSL. Let's do that. It will open a new code, our Visual Studio Code window, and that window will be looking into the WSL. I hope it all makes sense, but now you basically can open a file, write something in it and save it, and there is a built-in terminal inside of the VS Code, which basically is exactly the same as your normal terminal. You can open it by pressing Ctrl+tilde, and once you do that, you can see that your file is there and the contents of the file are correct. Good. And of course you can go back to your terminal that you had from before and check that the file appeared on the WSL system, so everything seems to be working. And with this, you're well equipped to go into the next video and see how to efficiently work with a terminal and why it makes sense for this course. In this part, we're going to be talking about how to set up our terminal to be useful in this course if you're using a macOS system. If you own a Mac, if you have macOS installed in it, then you already have a terminal app. For that, just open the search and type in terminal, and there's going to be the terminal app. So when you open that, you will already see the prompt, and by default modern Macs actually use ZSH. If they don't use ZSH, then you can easily refer to the other tutorials, say on Linux in this video, how to change your prompt to ZSH if you want to. We will be using ZSH here, and we will change the configuration that comes with it. But before we go there, we need to install some packages. And to install the packages on macOS, you can either use the store, or there is a nice way to install the cutting-edge version of the packages, which is called Homebrew. It's very reminiscent of the package manager available on Linux. It works a little bit in a different way, but the interface with which you call the packages is actually very, very similar. So to install it, just go to the website of Homebrew, copy the link and paste it in your terminal, and now you have Homebrew installed. What you can do now is you can basically install whatever command you want by just typing brew install and then the name of your command. So for example, brew install git will install git on your system. And we will be needing a couple of those programs down the line. But until that time comes, let's focus on making your terminal look a little bit nicer than it looks by default. And for that we will need to install a couple of packages from wherever they are stored on the internet. The one that I really like is FZF. It makes your history of your commands that you used look so much nicer. And if that doesn't make any sense to you right now, don't worry. We're going to cover what is history and how to work with this in the next video. Here it's only about the setup so that you can follow the next part more easily. Right, so what you can do is you can download FZF and then just call FZF install, and that should install FZF on your system. With this, we can proceed to install antigen. Antigen is basically a plugin manager for ZSH that allows you to have themes and different plugins installed in your command prompt in an easy way. So let's install that one. For that, we just download the antigen from wherever it is on the internet and put it into our home folder. Now the only thing left to do is to actually change the configuration of our ZSH to use it, and for that we have to modify the file .zshrc, and at this point you can just copy my configuration that I will link below, which is what I will do here. And once that is copied, you just save the file .zshrc and either source it or open a new terminal. And by that you should be done. Last but not least, in order to write code in any system, you need some form of a text editor. And of course you can use any text editor that you like, but I urge you to to use a text editor and not an IDE for this. And I guess the best, or at least the most popular option for now, is to use Visual Studio Code, which is a great text editor. And for that you can just go to the website, or to its website, and download the package for macOS, and then just install it as a standard package, as you would do with anything else. Once you're done, you can open it and open any file in it, and type something in, save it, and we can go back to the terminal and check that the file is actually present on the system and that we can see its contents. And with that, we should be well equipped for the journey forward, and if we need to install anything else, we can easily do that in the process. See you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.